am a 45 years old woman, my husband and I have a 15-aunt daughter Kate and a 9-year-old son Sam. My husband has a brother and a 40-year-old sister, Eva. Eva and her husband James have a daughter, Allegra. She is also 15 years old. Kate and Allegra have always been compared in the family. From the time they were born, it seemed to be a competition of who would walk first, talk first, do more, achieve more. And Allegra was always first. I won't go too much into detail about Allegra because that's not really the point, but I will say she's a beautiful, intelligent, truly one-of-a-kind girl, and her parents have done a great job raising her. My in-laws fell in love with her and think she hung the moon. This bothered me and made me sad for Kate, but I let it go for the most part. There's no doubt in my mind that they love all the kids equally, but out of the two girls you can tell who they admire more. Every summer, the whole family visits a holiday home that Eva shares with my in-laws. Over the summer, Kate met a boy, Luke, who was also holidaying in the area. They started dating. This was Kate's first experience with boys. Allegra had friends who were nearby, so for our first few weeks we didn't see her much. About 3/4 of the way through the holiday, Kate invited the boy she'd been seeing to dinner. Allegra was told to come, and afterwards she would be going to a party. At the dinner, it was clear that Luke was very attracted to Allegra. After dinner, Luke decided he would go to the party Allegra was going to as he had also been invited. They both asked Kate to go, but she wasn't allowed and was very upset. My husband and I felt it was not a safe or appropriate environment at her age. Eva informed us, because she knows we do not allow Kate into these environments, that it was an adult party, where there would be drinking and possibly other things going on. Allegra has grown up in a place where these kind of things are much more normal. And Eva and her husband made the choice to let Allegra live those experiences. From what I know and have seen, she handles it exceptionally and it has not caused any issues. However, it is not the way we have chosen to parent Kate, and so we didn't allow her to go. The next morning, Allegra came downstairs and asked to talk to me and Eva. She said at the party Luke was flirting with her and showed her some messages he'd sent her. We decided we would all talk to Kate. Kate spent the next 2 days miserable. When she finally came out of her room, Kate was caustic and everyone was getting a bit fed up with her attitude. Eventually, my father-in-law jokingly said, "Your mistake was introducing him to Allegra. How did you think that was going to go for you?" My mother-in-law told him off but added that Luke handled it terribly, but the outcome was sort of inevitable. Kate left the table in tears. We managed to get through the rest of the holiday, but when my husband brought up plans for Christmas, Kate refused to go. She said she couldn't bear being ridiculed by her own family and constantly compared to Allegra. After seeing how much this was affecting her, I spoke to my husband and said we shouldn't go. He argued that it would be wrong to let Kate take away time with family just because of a boy. I reminded him that this has been happening since they were born, but he said that we can't shield Kate from every special person in the world. He said he would talk to his parents about their comments, but that we should not set a precedent of letting Kate run away from reality. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later, Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what "virgin" on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. So, my fiancé took up cooking during quarantine. We used to cook little and instead ate a lot out of the house. We could afford it and tended to eat healthy. Of course, we can both cook, but given our busy schedule, it was easier to eat out. Also, to be honest, I don't really like cooking and consider it a chore to be avoided. I love food, but there are other things that I would rather do in my own time. Due to quarantine, my fiancé has decided to cook more and has found that she enjoys it a lot. This is great. I am happy for her that she has discovered something new that brings her joy. Turns out she's pretty good at it too and she cares about learning new skills etc. so I benefited too. I still don't really like cooking myself, as I said, so in exchange for her putting all that effort into cooking, I help her out by paying for takeout in the evenings when she doesn't feel like cooking, and also I do everything else, wash the dishes, clean the table, etc. on the days she cooks. To the best of my knowledge, she agreed that this was an appropriate compromise, and of course, if she felt it was unfair, I would be happy to fill the gap in other ways. But she seemed to enjoy it. As her culinary experiments expanded into baking and became more complex overall, she began to involve me in cooking. I would go into the kitchen to have a drink and check it out and she would say, "Oh, could you help me chop this while I fry this?" Or something like that. I cut carrots for her or something like that, chatted with her about food, and then went back to my business. I didn't mind it at all. But gradually I became her sous chef, especially when she wants to cook food together. Keep in mind that her culinary experiments are complex and sometimes take 2 or more hours. So my whole evening goes into these culinary endeavors, and it happens several times a week. On top of that, she tends to boss me around in the kitchen and can be a little rude. As you can probably guess, we got into a fight over this. I told her that I don't like her attitude in the kitchen when I help and I don't like to cook in general. I would feel better helping her if she wasn't so rude to me. But honestly, I don't want to spend 8+ hours every week cooking. It's not my hobby, it's hers. If she wanted me to take part in cooking, I bought everything or cooked something simple. She was very upset. She said it was unfair, that I was enjoying the fruits of her labor but not doing my part. And that cooking took 2 hours and dishwashing / cleaning only half an hour. I told her that it was her decision to cook very complex dishes and that I would be happy if she made a simple pizza or roast. After a certain point, the sophistication of her dishes moves into hobby territory. And I resent being made to feel like a bad partner because I don't want to spend a few evenings on her hobby. We haven't really worked it out. I actually bought / cooked my own food a few times so I didn't enjoy the fruits of her labor. But that seemed to upset her even more and our refrigerator started to fill up with more leftover food than she could eat herself. Another time I helped her but told her I had to go on video chat at 8 p.m. and she got upset when I actually stopped helping, and left even though I told her beforehand. I'm afraid I told her somewhat caustically that I was not her sous chef to command the kitchen. I tried to discuss it with her again when we felt calmer. I told her that I liked that she found a new hobby. But it's her hobby and I can't help it and don't want to feel obligated to do it. She countered that it was not feminist of me to put the cooking on her and benefit from it without helping her. The feminist connection doesn't make much sense to me because neither of us used to cook much. And she decided to take up cooking herself, but of course I didn't tell her that. I told her that if she wanted to discuss the division of labor in our household, we could do so and come up with something new that reflected the fact that she now cooks more. We tried to do this, but she wanted to count all the time she spends cooking as time around the house. So, according to her ideal distribution of housework, she spends over 10 hours cooking just dinner each week, which somehow leaves me with almost all other chores around the house. I told her I didn't like it because cooking complicated meals is a hobby. It's not fair to say that 6/10 hours of her housework is actually her hobby, and I have to do the equivalent amount of real housework if that makes sense. So we are in a bit of an impasse. Am I really a bad feminist? I don't think I'm wrong. I'm very familiar with emotional labor, mental stress, and all that, but I may be wrong. I love this woman and obviously want to marry her. But we are usually good at making logical decisions, and this is the first time we have had such a disagreement. I don't know how to get her to understand the line between cooking as a necessary activity and cooking as a hobby. P.S. The fiancé has taken up cooking gourmet meals as a hobby, but now it becomes my responsibility to help out and do more housework that I don't think I should. I am living with my family. It's me, a 15-year-old girl, my twin brothers who are 17, and my parents. My dad cusses a lot, and so do my older brothers. But apparently the standards are different for me. My dad overheard me saying a couple cuss words when I was on the phone with my friends, and he got mad at me for my language and for how trashy and unladylike it was. This wasn't the first time he called me, and only me, out for bad language. But it was the one that frustrated me the most because I could tell there was a double standard. I thought of calling him out on his language and hypocrisy, but then I had a different idea. I said that, yeah, it was a bad habit I was forming and didn't want to make a pattern, because if I got in the habit of cussing a lot, that wouldn't make me come off well when I start getting jobs or going to college. And as I was growing up, I wanted to learn how to speak respectfully and intelligently. But it was hard to keep from bad habits when I heard him and my brothers having potty mouth syndrome so often. They're setting an example whether they realize it or not. So I wanted to work on things for myself, but also together as a family. I suggested we make a swear tax where if anyone swears in front of anyone else who's participating, they give $1 to each person who heard them. I'd want that rule for myself because it would keep me accountable, and I'd really like it if the family joined me for it. So my dad said he'd join, and so would my mom. They got my brothers to be a part of it too. They didn't really have a choice. My parents decided to make it a rule. I know it's kinda petty, but I wanted to make the point that my dad and brothers swear a lot and I almost never do. In the few months we've had the rule, I've gotten about $250 from hearing my dad and brothers cuss, and have not sworn once. It's kinda making my brothers angry because they often cuss when they're mad, and I ask them for money, so they get madder and cuss more. So I get more money until they shut up. My dad actually got mad at me too. He was having some drinks, calling his brother and talking, and I came over after and asked for $18. He actually said he wouldn't give me that much, and there should be a cutoff. He gave me $5, which sends a weird message. Like swearing is bad, unless you want to swear a lot, then it's cool. I did it because I know I swear the least out of my family, but I was the only one getting in trouble for it.